Yeah, this is season 2 of Everything I Touch. I enjoy. We're here with Mike Watt and Nathan of Marv, and we're going to kick things off with this video from Providence, Rhode Island's Joy Boys. All right, fucking Mike Watt on the show. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey there.
All right, loud and proud. Sounded great. Mike, you do a show called Watt from Pedro. It's a radio show that you do multiple times a week.
And Watt from Pedro show 20 years, 7 going on 8 months ago. And usually it's once a week. Except when I was on tour, of course. But then, because of the situation, last 14, 15 months, I was doing 5 shows a week. I just cut back to 2 a week at the beginning of the year because looks like tour world is coming back. So Watt's going back to his other mode. But because of the situation and music being such a lifeline for me, why not talk to more people and see what they're doing with music? That's the whole idea of the show. The show is my attempt at paying back my debt to the movement. Me, D. Boone, and Georgie, we got to be known by other people because of folks like Black Flag and Meat Puppets, Husker Doos. So I'm trying to pay back on that debt. It's called the Watt from Pedro Show because first started off as a DJ at KBLT up in Silver Lake, which is about 25, 28 miles north of Pedro, like East Hollywood. And I was one of the only ones not from there. In fact, you couldn't hear the show once you got downtown, right? You could broadcast only like 5 miles. And then the FCC shut it down after a couple of years. And I was sad. It was the first time I was ever on that side of the microphone. So I had a tour right near there. And when I stopped in Portland, Oregon, talked at somebody's pad, they were just starting up a company to host websites. Said, "What, we could do your show, and you could even hear it in Pedro." Pedro's a harbor of Los Angeles, geographical map. And so, yeah, 20 years, 8 months ago, I started that. And brother Matt, although I haven't done it with him in a couple of years now because of the situation, but I miss him much. And soon I will be doing shows again with him. But there's so many people out there making music, you know. And in the old days, zines were really important. So in a way, I look at it as sort of like a zine. Same ethic, right? Same way I thought everybody's going to have their own websites. I didn't know they'd all act like part of the herd and go to Fake Look, Instant Ham, or Shitter. But that's the way it goes. Pat Boone sold a lot more Tutti Fruttis than Little Richard. Humans are tripping.
I wanted to ask you over the years, and maybe specifically in the past couple of years, if you perceived a common thread in your guests that you think maybe led to them completely committing to the life of a musician on Earth.
I'll tell you this, because 5 shows a week, last 15 months, I noticed with the more experimental cats, a lot of them happen to be the youngest sibling. I don't know if there's anything to that. It's just a statistical anomaly. But yeah, it seems maybe the older brother, older sister. I don't know. You know, I was the oldest. I don't know about that situation. In fact, all 3 of us men and women. I don't know. Maybe because of their record collections or stuff or experiences, and then kind of emboldens the younger. But that's what I've noticed. I've also noticed people that really are assertive about finding their own sound. At their core, they seem to be a little happier than the people that, you know, have dealt with the system and the the racket, and maybe came up a little short and found there's no justice. So those things.
You spoke about indebtedness in the context of connecting the community that you were from with what's going on now. And I wonder if you see a correlation between like identity within a family unit, if you're a younger sibling, older sibling.
Maybe the same thing, yeah. Or I'm the older sibling in terms of this. But then, you know, there was older siblings for me, right? John Coltrane talks about music being a big red.
You open every show that I've listened to of yours with a Coltrane track.
Oh, yeah. All 20 years, 7, 8 months. But anyway, he was talking about music being a reservoir. Like, you know, you're listening to that cat, and then he could have been listening to some other cat you don't even know of. But in a way, you're connected. And that's why he said music's a big reservoir. And yeah, when I look back at the movement, I see it wasn't really about style, haircuts, funny names. I mean, all that stuff was very interesting also. But I really think, personally, looking back, it was anti-arena rock. It's a weird situation in the 70s. I learned about this, you know, I helped the Stooges for 125 months. Finally, the youngest guy in the band. And I found out through those guys, you know, they're 10, 11 years. I see. There was club scene. There was garage bands. There was little labels like crazy in the 60s. It just got steamrolled in the 70s with the Nuremberg rally stuff, you know. And me and D. Boone, Georgie, we're 1970, we're 13 years old. So our whole teen life is the 70s. Weird place. But, you know, you are, yeah, Popeye said it, right? I am what I am. We're what we are. So maybe no movement without that arena rock for sure I can tell you there wouldn't have been a Minutemen without the movement. Even though me and D Boone, you know, we did this since we were 12. It was the way we were together. His mom put me on the bass, but we never had an idea of playing gigs for people. How can you with arena rock? But if you go to a club, especially when the movement comes, you go to a punk gig. I mean, the first thing, I didn't even think about it. My mouth opened up and the words came out to D Boone, we can do this. We were watching the Bags Sunday afternoon at the Whiskey. And this guy had told us, he heard us try to copy some song, Tie Your Mother Down by Queen or something. That's all people did was copy off records. And we'd come out and get a big. And he told us there was a scene up in Hollywood where people wrote the wrong songs and we couldn't believe it. I want to tell you how pathetic it was 40, 50 years ago. You can believe it. The best guy in music was the guy who could play Black Dog the best. Nobody used songs for expression. It's like building models, karaoke. You know? It's weird. So the movement set us right. And actually, you know, the tradition goes way back, you know, DIY. Walt Whitman, Leaves of Grass, 1855, right? He put it out himself. Writes 12 poems. He thinks he's going to stop the Civil War. I think we were in the same tradition as that. And so I'm trying to extend that. I also think the movement was kind of post-genre. Trying to get over that Gulag, Berlin Wall way of disorganizing music.
Yeah, I was trying to explain.
Figure that out. I mean, the first thing I had to figure out, what is talent, right? Then I had to figure out, you know, yeah, I'm in control of that, deciding for myself, right? It's kind of an existential thing. Not as far as, well, maybe, but that's up to the performer. But as far as me as the gig goer or the listener. And then the same thing about what trash can I want to stuff this stuff in. Or let it be free, you know, and exist in the freedom of the imagination of mind.
You're saying that there was an anti-arena rock sentiment in the 70s.
For sure.
And I was wondering,
for us, because we didn't know. I'm talking about people in the 70s that I saw at the gigs, right? There's 100 people. You see them every weekend, right? You don't really know them, but you kind of know them because you always see them every weekend, right? But SoCal's 150 towns. You fly over it looks like one, but it ain't. The Val, Orange County, Inland Empire, South Bay, West Side. You know, I didn't know any of these people. I barely know enough people in Pedro when I came here from Virginia. But these cats were deep with music, and they're very interested. And you could tell they didn't get along maybe with a lot of the Square John or you know, approved rock and roll, rock stuff. But incredible effect on us. Made it personable. You'd have to be there. You'd have to be a person who only saw arena rock shows and then for the first time got turned on to club scene. If you don't have that experience, I know it sounds ridiculous, but I'm just telling you the way it was. We just didn't know there was another way to do music. The only other way we knew was with your buddy in the bedroom, the garage. And we didn't know that was kosher enough to go and do gigs until the movement taught us that. We thought all real gigs were arena rock gigs. We just didn't have an idea, you know.
So you mentioned all the major platforms on the internet now with a certain tone of derision. And I was wondering if you, through all the conversations that you had with your guests or with fellow musicians in Pedro, have ever come across a vision for a rebellion against the sort of alienation that I think people feel with the amount of interaction that they live with the internet. And if there was a vision for rebellion against that you've been privy to. Maybe you could.
Yeah, you get your own website. I mean, that's as easy as the rebellion is. Your own website, like having your own zine. See, the ethics, despite the technology, the ethics remain consistent. Okay, you don't have middlemen, gatekeepers in between. That was one of the things about the movement that I really put value in. But on another level, these are telephone poles. You can put up your flyers, staple up your flyers, let people know about gigs. That was really incredible to us. A club gig. It seemed like no one was between you and the gig goer. It was the most straightforward way of bringing your music to somebody. So me and D Boone decided to split. Let's just divide the whole world into two categories: gigs and flyers. And anything that ain't a gig, it's a flyer to get people to gigs.
What are gigs like nowadays for you? You just played on New Year's Eve, right?
No, amateur hour. Day before, though, yes.
Yeah.
I try not to play. It's so scary. I've done a couple of them. They're very scary.
Oh yeah, amateur hour.
I'm not fucking into it. That's a good chance of getting killed. Yeah, so it was the day before. You know, Flipper guys invited us. I had to drive through a huge storm. Grapevine closed because snow. I had to take close to 10 straight hours, but it was worth it. So that's a gig. Rapping with you, this is a gig. A lot of things that some gigs you couldn't do in the old days, like make whole albums with people you never met by trading files, right? Collab.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a gig.
You did a recent collaboration with Zach Coons and Rick Weaver, who we had on the show last year.
Absolutely. They had me part of their big opera, right?
Mm-hmm. How'd that go?
Beautiful. I mean, they wrote me my script to read, you know, to deliver because it's part of the big story. And both those guys are righteous, big inspirations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let the freak flag fly. I like that. They're balls out.
Absolutely.
You know? And, that reminds me of the old days. You know, I remember when that show Happy Days came on. My pop said those weren't happy days. So, you know, we don't want a Fonzie thing about the old days. What I'm talking about is the aesthetics, the values. You can't remake those other days, and you really wouldn't want to. There's a lot of good things about today. A lot of bad things too. But you can use the internet for more than spreading lies and hate. You can actually collab with people, let people know about gigs.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of things we can do, spiels like me and you are doing now.
No doubt.
But, you know, things, it seems to me, the human endeavor have around it this dangling duality. It can be, it depends how you wield it. Right?
Yeah.
You take your knife and fork to cut your chow, or you can hurt your friend with it. Choice is up to you, you know? I mean, if you really want to get at the value of things, I mean, is the pocket knife actually the work of art? If I go to some website that talks about bass, it's all about the gear, right?
Mm.
We're all shit hoarders and fetish. If we only have the right stuff, we will be able to do it. Whereas Minuteman, right? We jam Econo, right? Whatever it takes to get that thing done. Well, maybe if you come from working people, you don't have the luxury of that. You know, that was not a slogan for us.
Do you have a?
But there's the same thing with this thing about anarchy. We didn't know that all the bands were supposed to copy each other. I thought you're supposed to, like, you know, have your own sound and stuff. Yeah. So when people said to us, "You don't sound like a punk band," man, we were so confused. Anyway, slow learners.
Do you have a rehearsal space?
I take things at face value. I've learned to do that because you get into trouble real quick if you start assuming shit. So I listen to people and I try to take them at what they're saying. Hopefully they're not running a hustle on me. They're plain speaking.
I'm gonna address the audience now, the viewers. If you guys want to ask a question of what, if you have my phone number for my, you can text my phone. And today that's what we got. We can't do any calls, unfortunately, because I'm using my phone to film myself. So, what do you have a rehearsal space, or do you jam in your house?
Practice rehearse. Musicians practice. I have yet to hear a basketball player say, I'm going to go to the gym and rehearse some hoops. But, you know, again, a semantic thing. I've had the same prac pad for 36 years.
No shit.
I wouldn't shit you.
Oh, man.
It's the former officer's head at Fort MacArthur Army Base here in Pedro. They shut down and gave to the city. It's called the Angels Gate Cultural Center now. And they had the shitter part, you know, of the head that I got. So I tore them all out and I put up a bulkhead and a hatch, and I've been there 36 years. But I also prac here in my pad because that's where I got my little studio, right? My Pro Tool HD setup. I can record everything except drum set. Apartment, you don't want drums, right? In my prac pad, I got a drum set. Always set up. Steve Perkins helped me get because I got tired of waiting for drummers to set up, tear down, and they could just jump on and ride, you know?
Yeah.
It's nothing like prac, you know? And talk about cat really dedicated to practice. John Coltrane, right?
Yeah.
And this guy pracked after gigs. I had a guest on. What's his name? Gino. Yeah. Maybe a couple of weeks ago, he said he was working with Anthony Braxton. When Anthony Braxton was a young man, he saw John Coltrane play in New York City. Between sets, he went to take a piss. And there's John Coltrane next to him pracking while he's pissing. Even with the odor. Yeah.
We got a text question for you. What are some of the most exciting places that you've ripped a gig?
I like playing everywhere, anywhere. They all got the potential of being great or being a nightmare. But even if they're nightmare, maybe still they'll be a character builder. So I look as experience as being a classroom. And you know what? I really believe if you keep your mind open enough, everybody's got something to teach you. So that's the way I approach gigs. Now, when I do tours, the first thing I think of is get my guys back safe. But then the next thing is people work hard all week to pay to come see you. So you got to do good for them. Then after that, everything else comes next. So those are my two things when I do gigs. Memorable gigs. Yeah, I've had a lot of them, but yeah, I forgot. They're burned into my fabric. I got to tell you though, the first time I played with the Stooges, oh my God, won't ever forget that.
Where was that?
Sickness. It was Coachella 2003. I thought I was going to be the only one, and then 125 months I got to help them. But I had a sickness. That gig actually burned out that sickness, and I did 25 straight gigs with my second man after. It was incredible. I remember one time doing a gig in West Hollywood, at the Viper Room, right? I thought it was going to be, blues and jam and E minor thing. And I get up there. Who's on stage? Doug Wimbish, George Clinton, Blackbird McKnight, Michael Hampton. We do the whole Funkadelic Maggot Brain album.
Crazy.
I remember we do, back in my mind, I look over at Doug Wimbish and he's like shaking his head. Yeah, you know this song, what? I couldn't believe that was happening. And for me to assume on the way up there, this is going to be someone, don't ever be like that. Don't sell the future out short. You don't know. It's still in the realm of possibility. And man, that was an incredible gig. I was told later that some of them songs George Clinton had never done live.
Oh, sure.
We did the whole album, front to back, in order. And it was totally unplanned. That was a trip. you know, the gigs with all the gigs with D Boone, oh my God, they were all trips. You know, I was not born an entertainer. I just wanted to be with him, man. And tell you, you look over at that guy, you could not be afraid. He wasn't conceited, but man, it was time for him to play when it was time to play. And he was an incredible instiller of confidence in another man to play alongside him. He was beautiful that one. Edward was too with the fire hose. He helped me a lot. That was the hardest part of my life, trying to keep play after losing D. So sometimes gigs are memorable just because they were hell. Not always the good time. I don't see this kind of work as some kind of royalty. It's a gig, like you know, something that has to be done just like everybody else's gigs, and so things are mixed up, and like that. And a life is made of many gigs, hopefully. So lots of chances for people to teach you stuff. Situations teach you stuff. Gigs are the real prac. I mean, you got to do the other prac, you know, with your guys alone. You got to do prac by yourself alone.
Yeah.
You're doing it in front of people. Oh my, that's the real. When a doctor uses the word praxis, huh? It doesn't mean getting ready. It's the actual thing. It's funny how the semantics with this is when it got kind of screwed over. Right? Your praxis. When we say a doctor's practice, right? It's not him getting ready. That's what he does.
Yeah, practice.
For us, yeah, right? Is practice or a law, right? My practice, right? But for us, like we're rehearsing, right? We're like actors and faking it. With that, no. We got to practice too.
We got another.
Theater, I got to say, the theater is in quite an artistic endeavor. Also, that is quite a practice.
Yeah.
To be able to play different roles, and because actually, if you look at life, it is about taking turns. So in some ways, you know, life, Mr. Whoever wrote those things, Shakespeare, or Shakespeare, but or whoever, the committee, 17th Earl of Oxford, whatever. Life is a stage, and we do take turns. And this thing of us being static in our little roles, that's not really all that accurate. Yeah, I think it's way more dynamic than that. For one thing, life's a journey, and we're all on journeys. So the journeys coincide, paths cross. Trippy.
You said to never sell the future short, and I was wondering if you felt like music was a viable vehicle to move through life with in order to experience like a rich variety of experiences.
Yeah. Well, obviously I used it at first to be with my friend.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't really, well, maybe we can service a lifestyle. No. Like I said, his mom put me on bass.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm so grateful to her. Oh my God. But I didn't know at the time. I thought bass was, you know, I found out this is before the movement, but bass is where you put your retarded friend. It was like right field in Little League. There was such a hierarchy. The movement took care of a lot of that, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it did. Because everybody was like, a lot of the cats were starting. So they're equal field. You know, also in a club, you can hear the bass. You can get up close enough and see, oh, that's why there's only 4 strings. They're bigger. I couldn't tell they were bigger. Me and D Boone's first gig was T-Rex, right? And we loved Mark Bolan, my first rock star. I got a poster. There was no merchandise yet. Some bootlegger guy. I bought a poster a couple blocks away for $2. But man, the guy was about 1/8 of an inch high. You know, I couldn't hear the bass. You know, Steve Curie, I listened on the records. You could hear him.
Oh, for sure.
And interesting lines, yeah. But man, at the gig, oh my God. It was trippy too. It was nothing like the records. He'd play a couple minutes of the song, then get on his knees and do lead guitar for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They had thing that I think he was a wannabe Jimmy in his way, but it didn't matter. What the thing was, like, then I go to a situation where, yeah, I'm watching the Germs. There's Pat, there's Darby. And then the guy that was standing next to me, he's on stage now, and there's Pat. I can talk to Pat. I can talk to Darby.
Right after the gig.
I've never been in a situation that never happened at Arena Rock shit.
Yeah.
In fact, I never even talked to the guy sitting next to the other gig goer, right? So you're in the dark. You don't know him. It's just bullshit in a lot of ways, you know. I can understand on the promoter level and record company and you know, maybe, but not as a person actually as a gig goer experience. It was terrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
We got a question from Maine via text. Has Watt ever had a UFO or paranormal experience?
The paranormal experience I had was right after D Boon got killed. I had this dream where I was in like some kind of bank or something, like the carpet even goes up the bulkheads and shit, like bright orange. And there's this weird, huge rectangular painting, like Peter Max kind of yellow submarine abstract trip on like 7 or 8 Abe Lincolns in his stovepipe hat and shit. And D Boon's studying this thing. And I'm like, man, I got to tell him he can't be here. You know, that he's killed. He can't be here anymore. So that was kind of in the dream world. And then another one with him like that was when I got his guitars, 2 of his Telecasters. His brother and went up to his pop's pad to pick him up, Bakersfield. And I kept him, and I wouldn't even open the cases for years. And then I finally opened the case to one of them, and the smell hit me. And I could see him for a second or two. And then something like that happened to me not too long after that when I was on tour with Jay Mascis. When I was at his pad where his mom had all her books, little Harlequin paperbacks, and Raymond Petbone's, his pad, his pop built it, and so it leaked and stuff. So that smell, I could see Raymond. So maybe it wasn't paranormal. Maybe there's something to do with smell and your memories. But man, I swear I could see those guys just for brief. And about that's the closest I've had to things like that.
Well, I was wondering if you wanted to speak for a minute on the subject of joy.
But the Minutemen song?
We could start there if you wanted.
Yeah, we made an EP called the Joy EP, right? I think one song was called Joy, and Georgie wrote the words. I loved writing music to Georgie's words because I would get stuck, you know, doing the same thing over and over, and then his words would show me a way out. And then D Boon wrote the song on the other side called More Joy with Dezo. It was kind of a dance song. But joy is something really worth pursuing. But maybe it can be kind of elusive if you try too hard. Sometimes it comes really unexpected. For sure, it ain't a convoluted thing. And the mind digs it so much that you try to recreate it. You try to think of what went into that. What was the recipe? And things get convoluted. So joy, in a way, to me, is sort of like good weather. That's hellish weather. Like living in Peter. New Year's Day kayak. Yeah, but then we got earthquakes. I mean, joy is a trippy thing. Joy is a trippy thing.
Yeah.
You know it when you feel it. It's sort of like good art. Good art brings you joy.
Yeah.
But it's hard to come up with the recipe, you know, or a good tune, right?
Right.
Those bring joy. Well, a good tune can bring sadness. A good tune can bring all kinds of things. Enjoyment. There's a lot of that in Walt Whitman's I Sing the Body Electric, right? I enjoy myself. It is an interesting word. It's a hopeful word. It's actually, I think, more realistic than a word like perfect. I'm into Wittgenstein, Ludwig Wittgenstein, his blue and brown books, you know? It's trippy about words, semantics. It's trippy how you can be original with words and not have to not invent one of them.
The way that you could put them together.
That's it. That's it. In fact, if you do start making them up, it's kind of hard to finish. But maybe, you know what I mean? You know, I've been really into Lewis's Porter book. I'm reading it to Peter DiStefano because he wants to learn about John Coltrane. And this thing, how the beboppers with all their chords and stuff. And after a while, let's go down to one chord. Let's get modal.
Yeah.
Great minds, you know, they get tired. They couldn't find the joy.
There's a song that has one chord, and it's called There's a Song in My Head. It's by a band called the Pterodactyls. And I was wondering if you could speak about the idea of hearing things in your head. Just go with that concept.
You know, without the machine in your hand. Because that was a big difference for me. In the old days, Minutemen days, fire hose days, had to have the machine there, right? I called it neck math, where the port hand is fretting. You're trapped by what you know. Then I got a bicycle, right? I didn't ride a bicycle for 22 years. I got a car when I said, oh, bicycles are for little kids. I was an asshole. This guy was in Atlanta. He sold me his 10-speed for $5. And I remember seeing bikes in people's pads, clothes rack, right? No, what? You're going to ride it. I end up writing my first opera on this thing without the bass in my hand. Actually hearing the sounds because the bike is quiet. And I'm doing it at the crack of dawn, you know, so it's a lot harder for people to run my ass over. There's less of them on the street. But I'm hearing the chain. I'm hearing the wind. I'm Peter up by the water, so I'm hearing the ocean. I'm hearing the tugboat. I'm hearing the foghorn from the lighthouse. Trippy thing about the lighthouse, right? Stay away, right? Letting away, come here. All these things I'm sensitive to that I wasn't before. I was in my car all sealed up. If there's any sounds, it's going to be from my, I'm going to play this Blue Oyster Cult song very loud. Like almost in defiance of reality, right? I'm going to make my own reality. And so by me letting go of composing and like you say, purely in the mind,
yeah,
it really freed me up to do something like the first opera, which was finally me being strong enough to talk about losing D. Boone, losing my pop, losing Kay. It was important. It's really important about that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with getting to know your instrument. In fact, getting intimate with it. But sort of like looking, it's funny, Soren Kierkegaard, and I just read in the Lewis Porter book a quote from John Coltrane. Soren Kierkegaard said, faith is like looking through a telescope in the wrong end. Everything gets, yeah, right? It brings everything. And I read this book 20 years before, but you know how things go by. Don't ever hurt to reread stuff, people. I did it with Ulysses 20 years later, On the Road 20 years later. Now, obviously, those words don't change, but damn, do they read different? Obviously, probably the reader changed a little bit.
Yeah. The instrument of perception.
Right.
Has been altered.
Right? I'm always reading myself into the stories. These guys never knew me.
You're right there with them.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. A comment for Watt, if appropriate. Mike Watt is the first show my parents ever forbade me from going to. He was playing Oklahoma City, and I was going to take a sojourn from Tulsa, maybe 1998. Glad to experience him now on this show. Thanks for killing it for many a year, Mike Watt. That's more of a comment than a question. But there you go, from Oklahoma City, some love from the past.
His parents forbade him, and I'd already been doing this for almost 20 years by that point. I remember playing in Tulsa a couple times, a place called the Crystal Pistol, but Oklahoma City a lot more. Some gigs you're always playing. Like people say, why are you always doing Boise? I say, look at a map. It's geography. It's a geography.
Yep.
In some ways, what I do is very linked to an old tradition called vaudeville. It's about working rooms. And actually, I'm very proud to be from that tradition. There was a time when there wasn't radio or television or movies. People working all day on the farm or in a factory, you would have to come to their town. So maybe technology got around some of that, but I still think the experience can be vital. And I'm so glad, like right now, right? We're doing a proxy gig, right?
Yeah.
You're bringing me into this guy's life.
The intention is identical, I think, to doing radio or a gig. So yeah, for sure. Just trying to spread vibrations far and wide.
We're trying to do the best we can. Right. But there is something about them seeing you in person, you seeing their town in person, that we lose here.
Oh, wow.
Okay. But you're right. On the other thing, we are making a connect on some level. So I think it's vital.
Do you think what do you think about the difference between live performance and recorded media, like records and CDs?
Jeremy, when you work a gig, it's all about the moment, the performer's moment, and the gig goer's moment. But I think your moment is gone when they're reviewing some performance that went to a piece of medium. You're no longer dynamic that way. They still are.
Yeah.
Because they can bring that, they can bring that performance into a part of their life, right? Where they might be very happy, or they want to be happy, or they're sad, or whatever. That's where the dynamic is. At the gig, you both are in that dynamic. When you're away from that, I'm no longer, the performer guy is no longer in the dynamic. It's all up to the listener. That's where I see the big difference.
Yeah.
Can't change, right? I can't change. I can't ruin it. Can't make it better, but I also can't ruin it. So there's pluses and minuses, right?
What's your mindset like when you're creating a frozen performance in a recording?
Performance is a trip because they're not one-man shows hardly ever. I'm usually with a crew.
Yeah.
So I got to get it together with them. But then we got to bring it to the people. So it's on a couple levels. Also, we're dealing with the sound man. He's almost the fourth guy in the band, and you've never even met him before.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth guy in your band. Like he's got a sound knob that's about this big. He could just turn that. Yeah, it's such a trippy thing. It's such a collab to do a gig. And you try to, lower the odds of it sucking out loud by doing some prac, by getting the sound man on board, by having respect for the gig goers. But still, baby needs a new pair of shoes, throw them dice.
Yeah. Gamble.
Throw them, it's a dice roll. It's a dice roll. And I shamefully have to confess it. I've ruined some gigs. It was my fault. Don't want that.
No.
But if you don't call yourself on that, you'll keep doing it. So you try your best. It's sort of like riding a skateboard. Who rides a skateboard just standing there all calm? Right? You kind of lean into it. Well, you might fall down. Can you talk your way out of it? Maybe, probably not. Probably have to get back up, get back on. Like I said, people worked hard all week. You really want to be that jive and just take and not give? So that's the way I look at it. It's a trippy thing. It's a dice roll. I mean, you try to get ready for it, try to make it the best you can, but it's kind of a dice roll. And I think if it ain't a dice roll, maybe you're on cruise control, you're sleepwalking, you're connecting dots. You know, you're using the Xerox machine, or you know what I mean? Maybe it's got to be a little risky.
I want to
play improvisation, right? Oh my God. No net.
Yeah. Music that's never been
right
revealed before.
What did Bob Shaw called it? Jumping away from the pole. I had him on the show and he told me, but jumping away from the pole. I like that idea. So I've actually tried to do collabs with guys where I pretend they're in the room. I know they gave me the file and I'm just playing with it, you know, but I just did one with Alan Ravenstein. I pretend he was there because we couldn't get the internet two-way thing going. So I just pretended like I was hearing this stuff for the first time and I'm playing to it. This project with Mike Pride and Brandon Seabrook, 3-layer cake. Try Northeast guys, in fact. And I tried it that way. But yeah, that's not the same thing. You're talking about a performance, a gig. Yeah. I mean, you know, venue for gig goers. But, you know, maybe some of the stuff overlaps.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for mentioning the 3-layer cake. I was going to ask you if you've been jamming with people and what that's been like.
We just made a second one. Okay. In fact, I'm going to put some spiel on it. I drummer man who mixed it, the first one, just gave me the stuff we did for the second one. And, you know, he asked me to do spiel on the first one. I thought if I put spiel on it, might sound like another Watt proj, you know, and people won't have to listen and they'll just dismiss it. But then when I heard what Brandon and him did, I thought this proj has enough identity. What can put spiel on? You know, I'm always worried about stuff like that. I think it's important. I don't want to jive anybody.
I want to apologize to the viewers who sent in a couple text messages. Failure of the apparatus. I was unable to catch a couple of them. And it looks like I may not be able to get to them without disconnecting myself from this interview. So many apologies. Some people did try to contact you and ask you something. And it looks like I won't be able to access it, unfortunately.
And I guess you could compensate with your own questions.
Yeah, I'm trying. I did ask pretty much everything that it occurred to me over this past week, and I was anticipating this interview.
Okay.
Oh, we got a reiterated question from Providence, Rhode Island, via text just now. What does this man eat for lunch?
You know, last 10 years, I've gone to 2 chows a day.
No lunch.
Yeah. In fact, or whatever you call it, early afternoon thing, you know, the second one. And here's the other thing. I only stay up late for gigs. I usually conk around 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And pop at like 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning.
That's life, man.
You know, I just turned 64 a couple of weeks ago, and it's just the way things have worked out. And actually, since this situation, right, 20 months, 21 months, whatever, I lost 25. I'm down 175 pounds. I lost 25, 30 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Cutting out sugar, cutting out salt. And I was down to 2 meals, but I really didn't know potatoes and rice and pasta and that stuff had all the sugar. I thought it was only candy bars. I stopped chowing them a long time ago, but There's sugar in everything. And of course you need some, you know.
So we got
He
another
told me-
question from a viewer said, I love your Bosch record. And have you ever written any other songs? Bausch?
Which record?
How do you, Hieronymus Bausch? Bosch?
Oh, Bosch. Yeah, Bosch. Bosch
He
is
loves,
Dutch for wood.
He loves that record and he was wondering if you wrote any other songs about paintings.
He's talking about my third opera, Hyphenated Man. I recorded this album in 2010 about being a middle-aged punk rocker. And for the parallel universe, for the, you know, whatever you want to call them, analogies, aphorisms, parallels, I used the little creatures. 90% of them came from three of his paintings: Garden Earthly Delights, Last Judgment, Temptation St. Anthony. I've seen all three. One's at the Prado, Garden of Earthly Delights in Madrid, Temptation of Anthony, St. Anthony, Lisbon, Last Judgment, Vienna. And yeah, I don't know 500-year-old Dutch, so I made up my own things. But one's obvious. There's a guy blowing his nose is a horn and he's blowing it. We say this, tooting your own horn. There's a guy skating on in the hell part, right? Skating on thin ice. I mean, that's what I think he was doing. All those little creatures, those amalgamation of different things. That mixed up with drollery, you know, medieval drollery. They'd write in the margins, right? A lot of the guys, they didn't have print and press yet, right? So you got guys copying to make books. They don't even know how to read and write. They copy mistakes. They get bored. They make little drawings of dicks and shit, tits, cunts in the margins. Mad Magazine used to do this. Remember the little things in the Argonis was the artist. I think he might still be with it. Almost 100 years old. But anyway, that's the way I looked at it. Because when I saw with my own eyes, not a picture in a book, Garden of Earthly Delights, it looked like a Minutemen gig. It looked like a Minutemen record. All these little things to make one big thing. I want to do that. But I don't want to rip off Georgie and D. Boone. So, yeah, talk about being a middle-aged punk rocker, because we were still in our 20s. We didn't think about that kind of shit.
From San Diego, I got a question. Do you write all the parts for your operas? Do you write and compose all the parts?
I write them on the well. For Hyphenated Man was a strange one because I wrote it all. I'm not a guitar player really, but I wrote it all on one of D. Boone's guitars. The other two, Contemplating the Engine Room, Second Man's Middle Stand, I wrote on the bass guitar. Now, of course, some little things like fills and some little well, Hyphenated Man has no guitar solos except for one part. And Tom Watson did supply those solos. But all the other stuff, he copied all my palsy-ass guitar things. I can't even hold a pick, right? I'm using my thumb and shit. Things are all like cheese cutters. But I wanted the bass to come second on purpose. There was some Minutemen songs like that, like History Lesson Part 2. 90% I write on the bass. In fact, I think a big future for the bass is to use it as a composition tool, because you leave so much room for your collaborators. Not a lot of harmonic content, but it's got the rhythm, it's got the starts and the stops. Nels Klein loves it. A lot of cats, they can't handle it. They want you to hold their hand. Why didn't you write on the cymbals or the kick drum, you know? Anyway. I like writing on the, you understand, I grew up with D. Boone, so I never had to teach him anything. I'd just play and he'd come up with a part. So that's how we did it in those days. When I lost him and I had to show other people stuff, I'd like to set them up with the parts. And sometimes I'll write their guitar part, or I'll help them with my mouth. I can't play drums, so I couldn't show, but I'll do it with my mouth. But If you're the boss, it's so easy to get your way. Just telling people what to do. But does that really get the best out of them? You got to make people feel inclusive, part of it. That's how you're going to get the best out of people. That's what I've learned. So I wouldn't say it's so much like a classical piece where everybody's got all the parts described, unless you're thinking like cadenzas, right? Little cadenza here, let your freak flag fly. So in a way, what I'm building is a pad with a bunch of rooms, and I ask them to furnish their own rooms. I'll design the pad and where all the rooms are and how they relate to each other. But sometimes I'll ask them to furnish certain rooms inside the pad. If I can use that metaphor. That's what it's for.
Well, I'm going to cut you loose, but it's been a fucking joy spieling with you.
Anytime. I want to have you back or anytime. I love what you're doing. I love the way you let me just answer. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. You've got the floor, my friend. But thank you a million times.
Right back. And keep on keeping on, Jeremy.
Will do. All right, folks. That was fucking awesome. I'm going to play a Marv live video, and then we're going to have Nathan on to speak about the project. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. All right, folks, 2 seconds and we'll be right as rain. Just gonna hop in here. Technological miracles about to take place. Oh, look who it is. Nice. Almost. All right. Good to go, I think. Can you hear me?
I got you. I'm here. I got
Fuck
my
yeah.
got my headphones on. You're in high def.
Hell yeah. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Very happy to be here.
Thanks for being on. All right, man. Let's talk about Marv.
Did you just say you played a video?
Yeah. It was offered to us by Charlie. Or Ryan, rather, I think. Ryan Martin.
Cool.
It was live at outdoors at the Nightlight. It's about a 4-minute clip.
Cool. That was a fun show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm just hanging out here, grumpy and sober.
Same.
Yeah. I got a non-alcoholic brew. I found out recently that they can't be called beer for legal reasons, so they're brews. Just thought I'd share.
Near beer experience is pretty sweet.
Yeah, not bad.
So, I think the first time that I ever spoke to you about Marv, I went off on like being perplexed about what Marv was all about or even what it was. And you seemed pretty annoyed with me, and I think rightly so. But I was talking to Dave Public recently about Marv, and he just opened the conversation with asking, what is Marv? You know? And that seems like maybe a question that people around Providence, at least, they just feel like they don't understand and need to get that covered, like right off the bat. I don't know.
Sure. Be happy to fill in any blind spots people have. It's a very simple project involving me and my really good friend and housemate Jeff Schilling, who he couldn't be here right now. He's in Durham, North Carolina, doing something, I don't know. He just told me. I texted him and he said he can't make it. So anyway, I apologize about that, but it's me and Jeff, and we started, I guess, in kind of mid 2018, I guess, playing together. For me, it was like the first collaborative project I had in over a decade, so it was very new. And it's still very collaborative to this day. And we're mostly just a studio thing, less of a focus on like the live stuff, but we'll play live if we have the chance. And have had a lot of fun doing so recently. So we'll probably try to do that some more. But we practice at least every week, and we try to record almost every practice. So we have a lot of material. Is there anything else? I don't know. Like I don't know what people are confused by, I guess.
Right, yeah. It wouldn't make any sense that there'd be any confusion. Because you're basically at ground zero. But I guess there was a fair amount of confusion. But it
Yeah,
makes sense.
it's just two people, playing keyboards and recording, and we're pretty. I don't know. At least initially, we're kind of straying from this recently, but we were pretty kind of improvisational in terms of initially we were just kind of jamming together until we fell into something. But now we're kind of like demoing separately and bringing ideas to practice and going from there. We've changed a lot since we started playing together, so it's been cool. Like I was playing bass initially, and we had like a drum machine and stuff. It was pretty different, but we've really tried to just like follow the lead of I don't even know what, but just wherever the random play of chaos will take us.
We were supposed to come play with you down in Philadelphia, and I was wondering if you could talk about how that gig went.
Oh, the gig was awesome. We played 2 shows. We played Richmond the night before, and when we were leaving for the show in Richmond on Friday night, we weren't even sure if the Philly gig was going to happen. And so I was pretty grumpy because we kind of booked Richmond just to have a show on the way up to Philly. And I was like, oh, so now we're just going to play this Richmond show. And people were dropping off the Richmond show because of COVID stuff. And same thing happened at the Philly show too, as you know. But both shows ended up happening, and they were both really great. To speak to the Philly show, it was in this art gallery right off of South Street that I had never been in before. The owner of the art gallery offered me my choice of DMT, LSD, or psilocybin, or water with lemon right before I played. And I requested the water, and he brought it. And I was really concerned about what else was in there, but I drank it, and I felt good, and I played. And it was a great show. There were a lot of people there. In your stead, in Lazy Mag's stead, Lance jumped on the bill and played a really, really fun modular set as is his style. It was really nice. It was really good to see him. But yeah, I don't know, like it was a decent turnout considering I had very low expectations. I think there were probably around like 30 or 40 people there. It was really nice to just hang out and just be there. The gallery space had like a nice like kind of custom hi-fi PA that was built for the space. And things sounded good, so I was happy. I was happy to hang with homies in Philly.
What's Marv's relationship to fidelity?
That's a good question. I think, fidelity is important, no matter what your end result is. I mean, fidelity is just a question of what, like a transparency between what idea and then final form, or do you mean like quality of the overall sound in terms of whether it's like some sort of lo-fi thing or hi-fi? But I guess for me, fidelity and Marv is like a complex relationship where things are simultaneously, I don't even really know what I'm trying to say other than I don't really think that fidelity is a primary concern, but I don't know. Can you speak a little more what you mean though by fidelity? Because I think of multiple things when you say that.
Yeah,
I guess
you should I guess, pontificate on whatever associations come up. It's a pretty open-ended question.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess in fidelity, in terms of just like nice recordings, that's really important to us, and we try to record well. And I think we try to like envision the recording process as much of a creative process as the compositional process, I guess, or the performance. Just the way things are recorded, or how they're recorded, or through what, you know the drills. But that's a big part of what we do. And I think depending on what we're trying to do, there's varying degrees of, quality to the sound, I guess. It's really important for me that things are very discrete, sounds are very discrete, and then brought together in intentional ways. We just signed off on a record, or the mix, to send it to the label last night on our new record. And it's pretty different, I think, or not that all that different, but it's kind of like a bridge, I guess, between our last two records. Not as expansive as the Most release. There's a higher density to the sound. I guess also when I think about fidelity, I think about whether or not something is aligning with like what you intended it to sound like, because everything has a certain fidelity, whether it's a high fidelity or not, So I think that, I don't know, this has been a very rambly answer, but I try to record things and get them to sound good together. That's long and short of it.
Yeah. In the collaboration process, do you find that fidelity ever gets transactional between the two of you?
Yeah, but there's an openness there, I think, something that I've really enjoyed, because I was just performing alone for so long and writing alone for so long and jamming alone for so long. And it's been really nice to kind of have somebody else to play off of and to take their ideas and mold them and change them, and vice versa, to create something that, I never would have done myself. The other thing that's been really nice too is that Jeff is just really, I like to fuss over things a lot, and I can kind of get lost doing that. And Jeff is much more like, let's move on to the next thing. Let's keep going. Let's record more. Let's let's not belabor this particular point and move on. And I think that's one reason why it feels like we've been more productive than other things I've done in the past, I guess.
Do you ever consider the idea of vocals or lyrics, or is it completely out of the question?
Yeah, that's not something that we're particularly interested in. I don't think either one of us are lyricists, really, but we do enjoy naming our track titles. We just went through that process for the new record, and it was a lot of fun.
After the fact.
Yeah, after the fact. Like after we sequenced the record and everything, we kind of just then sat down and like talked about what each track should be called and the record itself. So
let's rewind and talk about the first two, and then we'll get to this third one, because I'd like to, if you're into it, I'd like to be kind of dissect and go over them briefly, or
absolutely.
Length. So the first one was the one that you did for Phil, am I correct?
No, the first one was for Charlie on Tone Log.
Yeah.
And that one came out, I guess, That was supposed to come out in the spring of 2020, but that got disrupted, and so we released it in, I guess, July of 2020.
Do you guys play often in the Triangle area? Carborough, Durham?
I mean, before the pandemic, I think we had only played maybe 3 or 4 shows total. And since then, we've played, not including this recent trip to Richmond and Philly, I think we've only played maybe 3 or 4 other ones. Our first gig was opening up for Cave, which was pretty fun. And it was a weird blizzard here in Chapel Hill, which was pretty rare. It was like 9 inches of snow. And there were like maybe 15 people at the show, and Cave like drove through the blizzard to get there. They arrived like well after our set. It was a lot of fun. But no, we don't play that often really, but for reasons that should be apparent to everyone listening.
Yeah. What do you think acts? What's the characteristic that acts as a bridge that the third LP has in relation to the first two?
I thought the thought was something that kind of popped into my brain earlier today. And I guess the first record, to me anyway, feels like pretty dense and pretty jammy at times too, like just kind of like much more off the cuff, whereas I think the second release, the Keyboard Suite record, is much more compositional, I guess, and spacious. There's more negative space rather than like just kind of like densely filling up everything. And I guess also too, the first record was purely, all the sound sources were only synthesizers. Like we're just jamming on synths only and writing on synths. I don't want to make it sound like we're a jammy kind of band, because we're really not. We're pretty intentional about all the stuff that we try to do. But I guess for the second record, we incorporated a lot of other elements other than just synthesizers. And so in this new record, we did that as well, but to me, the songs feel more like in a more, I guess, maybe playful vein compared to the second record, more like the first record, which feels more kind of playful and off the cuff than the second one. So, and the third one kind of feels like it's both of those things. So it's like simultaneously the instrumentation and then just kind of like our relationship, I think, to a lot of the tracks. And there's examples of ones that we were like, I mean, I guess the first record too, like every single track that's on that record, we like wrote and recorded in one session. And there's a few tracks that are like that on the new record that's coming up. But there aren't really any that are like that on the record that's on Unmost. So I guess that's how I'm kind of positioning our upcoming release in my brain right now.
Is the music played or programmed?
There's no programming at all. It's all played. Yeah. One of the main things we do, I guess, is like Jeff is a much better keyboard player than I am, and I'm trying to get better. And I'm all right. I can play stuff, but he's a bit more proficient of a player than I am. And so one thing that we kind of have fallen into recently is that he'll play and I'll be kind of like live dubbing his performance. which I guess I'm performing as well, but the performance is like my treatment of what he's doing. And there's lots of examples of that happening in modern music, but that's kind of something we've done a lot that has been really fun. That's kind of how we've been performing lately too, with Jeff on a stage piano and me kind of affecting what he's doing live. But yeah, almost everything we do is played live rather than sequenced or anything like that.
Addressing the viewers, if y'all want to ask Nathan a question, of course you can reach him via texting my phone number, and I'll do my best to catch it before it disappears from the screen of my telephone. I want to talk about how people can find the records. Obviously, you can just Google it, but there's a more direct way that people could do that. And if you want to like name drop and maybe go into detail about the labels that you've worked with and are currently working with.
Yeah, sure. So the first record, which was our self-titled record, was on Charlie Heron's label. He was one of the owners of Nightlight Bar and Club that I'm sure many of you all know and love. But it was on his label Tone Log, and there's still copies available of that one. And that was for the vinyl version of that record. The cassette version was on another label called Future Corridor that our friend Grant is running and is working on his second release for the label now. But the cassette's totally sold out. There's still copies of the record left, and that's distributed at alldayrecords.com in wholesale and purchase for the individual. The second record, Keyboard Suite 1, was released by my friend Phil Mayer's label and Most. And that one, I guess we did one repress of 150 copies, and there's still copies left of that one. Not too many, though. I know they're stateside. I think you can order them both from alldayrecords.com and then also Torn Light Records out of Cincinnati. They just ordered a big rip of them. So those are the two spots for that record that you can still get that record. And then the third record is about 65 minutes of material, and it's going to be just a tape. But Alex Swing and Devin Tuttle, who do New Body Tapes out of Raleigh, are going to put it out. And I just sent it, if they like it, I just sent it to them last night, and I haven't heard back, so fingers crossed.
Nice. So some pretty North Carolina-centered activity.
Yeah, Phil's back in North Carolina now, too, so all North Carolina all the time.
I'm curious about if the music that you're doing now is more through composed. It mirrored like a trajectory of like you taking the project more seriously as time went on, and less of like a fun thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started playing together, it was almost a joke. Like, that's kind of why we're called Marv, which is kind of an elaborate joke that I don't really want to go into because it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, we've both taken it a lot more seriously, recently. And I think that aspect of it really took us both by surprise too, because it was never really intended to be a serious thing, but just a fun thing. And we're still having a lot of fun, but it's very intentional now in a way that it wasn't before. It's very kind of idea based too, where we'll have an idea for a different process or a different sort of composition, and we'll go in that direction and follow it and see where it leads. And that's been surprising and nice, because kind of outside of the world of jamming, which is nice to remove my mind from in some ways, because that's something I've done for so long. But we do try to intentionally compose things now, with a lot of thought behind the sound.
Does the aesthetic of how the record covers look fall into that kind of thinking, that thought process?
I mean, I didn't really have a huge hand in either of the designs of either of the record covers. I guess the first one, I did send him that. I sent the artist that Conrad Schnitzler record, Consequence. That's just like a black text on a white background, if you're familiar with that. And it did come out kind of like that. So I guess I was kind of steering the ship a little bit on that one. But the other one, but two artists designed both of the covers very intentionally while listening to the music too. So I guess there was some sort of feedback there, which I hope is translated in some way on the cover art.
Nathan.
Yo.
I'm going to cut you loose and end the broadcast.
All right, man.
I want to congratulate you on completing the new album, and thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I hope you're doing well.
We're going to make up that canceled gig and hopefully have you guys up to Providence soon and jam with y'all.
Yo, let me know anytime. I would love to come up to Providence and play when situations allow us to.
That's great to hear.
Would really love that.
Again, thanks for coming on, bro.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. That concludes tonight's stream. I hope it looked and sounded